Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So today I wanted to go ahead and just do this Reddit post because I thought it's kind of funny and I felt like a little bit bitchy today and I was like, let's just do this today. By the way, happy October to all of my peeps that love October. October is usually very spiritual for me. It's usually one of my peak months, so we'll see how it goes. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. R/FatLogic is a toxic community for naturally skinny people to feel superior to fat people. So when I read this title, I was just like, oh my gosh, because I was looking at FatLogic, or I was looking at doing more of it. I think it's, it tends to be kind of popular. Sorry. I feel like people like it. And I was like, I could do it. Let's do it. Because sometimes I like to just read when I'm doing this. And so I was like, let's see. And this came up. Like one of the top searches was like, FatLogic is toxic. And so when I read that, I'm just like, what's the problem? What do we see that the problem is here? Do you guys know already? I'm going to act like a teacher today. What's the problem? Can you find it? Oh. Okay. Naturally skinny. So when I was looking at that, I was like, okay, this is probably going to be something reinforcing. So let's see. Let's see if we can break it apart. To my understanding, R/FatLogic, by the way, reinforcing of E followed by letter D. Okay. Especially BINGE, which that one is greatly reinforced for some reason. To my understanding, r/FatLogic is a subreddit devoted to sharing screenshots/images of posts about body positivity, weight loss, or the benefits and difficulties of being overweight. I don't think it's about weight loss. It's usually about people not wanting to lose weight. That's what I've seen, or saying that it's impossible. That's what I've seen. For some context, I am a high school varsity athlete who was a teensy tiny bit chubby a couple months ago. In middle school, I struggled with you-know-what and you-know-what, and I didn't want to slip back into another issue. To avoid this, I did a ton of research about healthy weight loss, and I joined several subreddits, including r/FatLogic. So I think it's important to understand the context. You may not be totally out of it, especially if you're like, I don't know. This is what I have to say. People in general, they think that if you say you had that issue, that you are trustworthy. But when you hear somebody say they have that issue, I need you guys to always question what comes next. Because one of the biggest issues of those issues is lying. Lying is a huge part of all of them. Lying and hiding. So you have to look for physical evidence of what is being said. And what does that mean? In the case of the one where it's too little and the one where it's too much, you can usually tell based on size. Size is going to be a factor. So when I talk about it, which yes, I will, put my I have a right to say something pants on. When I do, you guys know I do because I have significantly downsized over a sustainable pace, slow and steady over years. That's a huge amount of credibility. So when I say that I no longer have this issue, there's time, evidence, physical shift sustained over time that you can see. So you can say, okay, yes. If you don't have that, then just be very skeptical. And I think you should still, I mean, it's totally fine to be skeptical of me too, but you need to be skeptical, period, when people say that. Look for physical evidence of recovery. If you see warning signs, if you see drastic shifts and all this stuff, like William, for example, I'm going to call him out full on. It's pretty obvious that he shifted to a different issue. It's pretty obvious. And you have to look at that stuff when somebody says that. It doesn't give them a badge of honor or like they have a right or they are so much more educated about something. If anything, it means that they may be lying. They may be lying. They may be biased. They may have problems when it comes to this stuff where they're not looking at it clearly. Just be skeptical, okay? It made me feel really, really bad about myself. It's clear that people don't intend this, but the general message I got from the sub was that having an other body type than skinny is unhealthy and disgusting, and that losing weight is super easy if you just apply yourself, and every fat person should lose weight. Okay, well, this is just facts. This is subjective. Skinny is also kind of subjective. We need more hard terms to be able to differentiate what is being said. However, what we can say is that pretty much fat is unhealthy. So on this channel, I define fat as specifically being big enough where you start to have to accommodate your size. On this channel, if it was purely visual, I would consider it mid-size. But I think as far as being overweight, it's when it's just mostly visual or just basically visual, that's mid-size. If you're big enough to be fat, you're going to have some kind of accommodation. You're going to struggle going up the stairs. You're going to, you know what I mean? There's going to be something going on. So I think that a lot of times people, they think that, you know, being even class 1 obese, which I would even say mid-size, it can be on the lowest end of class 1 obese. Like if you're kind of in between, you might be there depending, but mid-size is kind of subjective anyways. You have to kind of see where you're at based on height, and there's just a lot of stuff that goes into it. But when it comes to being fat, it's like, hun, you have some kind of health issue. Typically, there is no healthy fat. Like, it doesn't happen. There's less unhealthy and more unhealthy. That's what you have. And the bigger you are, the more unhealthy you are. Period. It just is what it is. Even at a small fat level, you're going to be a lot more moody. You're probably going to be more depressed. You might have high blood pressure or something like that. You might struggle with iron absorption, which is a major issue, especially for women. But being even class 1 obese, it has effects on iron absorption. You know, your body starts to shift. It goes into a sick state, even being in class 1 obesity. And if you go class 2 and class 3, it gets worse and worse and worse. Things escalate quite a lot when you jump categories. So it's not good. But even at that lower level, it is unhealthy. You're putting yourself in a difficult situation mood-wise. If your iron is messed up, your mood can go really sour really easily. You start to risk fatty liver. If you have a fatty liver, honey, you can induce a hypothyroid state due to not being able to balance out your estrogen, as your liver is what balances out your estrogen. So I'm telling you, it ain't good. It's not good. If you go further into it, you can become pre-diabetic, and then you can become diabetic. It puts you at risk for that. If that happens, then there's a lot of stuff that can go on. And if you are diabetic, it will make it worse to be obese. There's really no benefit to being obese at all. I've told you guys a lot. Obesity, it lowers the dopamine in your brain. It lowers the dopamine receptors. That complicates things like ADHD. That also, for somebody who doesn't have ADHD, it might give you ADHD symptoms that are due to obesity. So you don't want to create that in yourself just from being obese. And you certainly, if you have the problem, you don't want to make it worse. You're going to make it worse by being obese. This is all just state of being stuff, hun. So it's not okay. It's not acceptable. We don't accept fatness. Fatness is not acceptable. Therefore, we don't accept it. Period. Okay, let's continue. I remember one post in particular that was a screenshot of a blog or a post about weight loss. It was assumed to be written by a fat person and basically said, you can either count calories, eat every 3 hours, drink 3 liters of water a day, do an hour of cardio every morning, avoid carbs after lunch, give up dairy and sugar, or love yourself and your body. I liked the message. I thought it was sweet. The caption from our FatLogic said something like, this is stupid. Don't they realize that skinny people don't do any of those things? Losing weight isn't that hard. So this is toxic ritualistic, babe. The writer of this post is still in it. They can't see outside of a black and white framework. This is incredibly black and white. So what are one of the hallmarks of somebody that has E followed by the letter D? They think in complete black and white. This also relates to people who become so hypothyroid on a physical level that they go into the hypohaze. That's what I used to call it. It's essentially when you're extremely hypothyroid, you can't think without black and white either. So it can be physically reinforced through hypothyroidism, or it can be just purely psychological with E followed by the letter D. But as you can see, they can fit together like a glove. And pretty much all of the toxic ritualistic stuff will induce a hypothyroid state in a person because you're messing with your metabolism, you're messing with your body in that way. It is stressful to the thyroid if you are doing these behaviors, any and all of them. So if you're overly reductive, that's stressful. If you're binging, you're typically doing so on foods that are not helpful at all. One of which is seed oils, which, for some reason I've been seeing a lot of people shilling for seed oils lately, but it's, what is that saying? The poison is in the dose, right? If you're having like a little tiny bit, it's not going to do anything. But if you're having like 700 calories from it every single meal or day, it's bad. Like, so if you're constantly having it like every day for months, you're going to make yourself hypothyroid. You're also going to give yourself a fatty liver, period. That's a very fast way to get those issues because having that much of anything really is bad. But like if you're just eating that much, but those oils and stuff, they're not great for thyroid health. And once again, if you get fatty liver from it, which is really easy, you will probably have a hypothyroid state as well due to the liver not functioning fully. So again, the poison is in the dose, in my opinion. A lot of people are like super strict about it. I don't think there's anything wrong with being strict about it, but I also don't think that if you have something once a month or something like that, it's going to kill you. Or if you have a tiny, tiny bit in something, it's going to throw you all off. I don't think so. So again, you have to avoid the black and white thinking. But if you're like literally having fried food, like McDonald's or something, like you're having McDonald's fries like every single day, it's going to be bad for the thyroid and it can induce that state. I'm just letting you know. I'm letting you know. So remember, amount really does matter a lot. It totally does. And for my hypo girlies and boilies, do not have those oils at all. I would completely cut them out and do not drink either. And if you have a fatty liver, I would suggest the same. Don't eat those oils. Don't have alcohol, period. I know that people don't like to hear that, but we have to take these health issues seriously, and you have to not do too much. Also, don't drink too much. You'll give yourself hypo as well, as alcohol is very estrogenic. I'm just dropping the truth bombs today, but that's just a different topic, but it's the same in that sense, okay? Balance, moderation, sanity, okay? All I'm saying is bingeing can induce that primarily through those means. And then I would even say like the body obsession does too, because I think it like raises your cortisol, like you stress yourself out, or it makes you get like an adrenaline rush from looking at the mirror and stuff. And if you're doing that habitually over a long period of time, again, adrenaline is antithyroid. So pretty much all of the behaviors will induce hypothyroidism. I'm just letting you know. I'm warning you. If you have this issue, you might need to get your thyroid checked, or you might need to do some work to restore, which a lot of times it has to do with getting a lot of nutrition in. There's a lot of lack of nutrition in these issues. I know that's so shocking, but you need to get your nutrition in. You need to have all of the vitamins and minerals and everything and get them all up and build up your stores. And then obviously no longer binging and getting out of the stress obsession with how you look. Breaking that fixation is really important on a physical level too, because it's really stressful. It's just stressful, you know? If you're like always thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm fat, and oh my gosh, I'm this, and like you're stressing yourself out all the time. And that is not good for you on a physical level. Okay? So let's continue. Point is, this is black and white. So the truth is, sure, you can count calories. I don't think that that's a big deal. I think that to a toxic ritualistic person with binge, they act like it's a huge deal. I think because it solves the problem. And people that have that issue, they don't want to solve the problem because it reduces tons of drama and it just gets rid of the magic of it, to be honest. It's kind of like it's a magical belief system in a lot of ways when you're in these issues. But when you're in the binge one, you don't want to count, because if you count, then it basically takes all of the mystery out of it and the game is over, essentially. So that's why that's so hard, because people use that as a distraction mechanism. They use all of them as that, but this is how it registers within binge. So it's just like a constant distraction. And so if you just count and you see what you're doing, it ruins it. So that's why they don't want to do it. Eat every 3 hours. I don't think this is a big deal. I don't think you have to. Drink 3 liters of water a day. You don't have to, but it's not a big deal if you do. Do an hour of cardio every morning. You don't have to, but it's not a big deal if you do. Avoid carbs after lunch. You don't have to, but it's not a big deal if you do. Give up dairy and sugar. I don't think you have to. I haven't. Certainly not. Not at all. I don't eat starch though. But I avoid starch just because it releases more insulin than even sugar, which I don't know if a lot of people know that, but it's a little bit harder to lose if you're having like tons of starch. That's just some advice. I would just lessen it. You don't have to eliminate it like I do, but I just don't have it for now. I am going to have some on Thursday though. So I have it occasionally. It's not like I'm avoiding it like that. It's just I try to keep it lower because it's not as good for weight loss specifically. It'd be really good for bulking though. It's good for that. It's easier to get in a lot of calories with starch. So it's really good for like starvation, and it's really good for bulking, and it's really good for that kind of stuff. It's also good if you're like super hypo and you need like pure glucose, because fructose primarily goes to the liver, which is good because you want the liver to be able to get rid of the estrogen. And that's primarily what it uses fructose. And then glucose is what goes to the thyroid. So sometimes when I was really, really hypo and I was like so bad, like especially like winter of 2022, like, oh my God, I was like so hypo still. I had like a lot of rice cereal and it made me feel better. Like I actually felt alive again. So sometimes you have to have starch too, you know, or it can help. But yeah, point is, I don't typically have it when I'm in this strict cut, just because it doesn't help. I try to control my satiety as much as I can, and it's honestly, I'm eating a lot of like, I do have a little bit of sugar. Maybe like 20% of my calories is like simple sugars, and then the rest is like a bunch of protein, basically, which I'm like, oh my God. It's like super diet culture, which they would hate. But it kind of has to, because it's the only way at this current moment that I'm not going to be as hungry. When I was SMO, I had to have a lot of fat and sugar and everything, like carbs and all that to not be hungry. But at this stage, it's really about protein. And it has been that way since the mids for me, where it's been a lot more protein focused. By the way, super fat people or people who are very big, if anybody's watching who's very big, that's why people who are like more normal always talk about protein. It's because when you're in a more normal weight, it actually is the most satiating. So anyways, just need to explain that because it is different. When you're bigger, it is, which is really crazy. But anyways, I'm going on too many tangents. Let's continue. Or love yourself and your body. I like the message. Losing weight isn't that hard. Okay. Don't they realize that skinny people don't do any of these things? Losing weight isn't that hard. It's very clear that a naturally thin person wrote that comment. There we go. Toxic ritualistic. I do believe that most people on that subreddit have a naturally thin or average body type. Anyone who has actively tried to lose weight knows that you do actually have to do at least half of those things in order to lose the weight. You just have to do this one, babe. 1. And some people don't even do that and they still can. But for my toxic ritualistic peeps, I would suggest this because it takes you want all the magic gone. You want it totally ruined if you're trying to burn down the problem. That's going to do it. That's the fastest way. However, you do need to figure out your genetic makeup, figure out what works for you. Some people do better with higher fat. Some people do better with lower fat. Some people do better with higher carbs, lower carb, higher protein, lower protein. It depends on you. Your satiety will guide you. So you can figure it out, basically. You can figure out what foods make you really hungry and you just don't have as many of those, or you don't have them. You know? But you got to keep it balanced, obvi. You have to have like your vitamins and minerals coming in. But people do have different genetic variation. Like I know for me, I do have to have carb. And I used to do keto and it just does not work for me. I need carbohydrate. I need carbohydrate more than I need fat, even. So, yeah, that's just me. It's just me. I definitely need protein, you know, all that stuff. I try to have at least some fat every day. But you still want your diet to be balanced, but I'm just talking about in terms of ratios. Like, you need to figure it out. Like, when I was super morbidly obese, I needed a lot of carb. I needed a lot. It was just what I needed, and it worked. I got out, you know what I'm saying? So look at your genetic variation of where you're at. That's my biggest suggestion, and also allow it to change if it needs to change. So if you have to shift your macros around, there's no problem with doing that. Okay, anyways. And unless if you've had to lose, okay, let's see. The fact is losing weight is very, very hard. So there's nuance to this. There are certain phases that are harder than others. So where I will agree is when you're super morbidly obese, that is the hardest it is to lose. You have the most hormonal fluctuation. You're kind of all over the place. It's a lot. It's extremely physical. It usually takes up pretty much your whole life, or at least I don't want to say that, but it takes up a huge portion of your life to downsize from super morbid obesity, because everything in your life has to kind of be oriented around it. And you need to do it because your life is in danger. I'm just going to say it flat out. At that size, like, you're having severe health issues, it's worth doing. There's priorities that you have. You need to make this your top priority. Period. So that's really, really hard. Yes, it's very hard. Morbid obesity, so like class 2, it's half as hard as super morbid. It's still hard though, for sure. Class 1 is not hard to lose in. It's just hard in terms of motivation, which I talked a lot about dopamine. And for you guys who have been on the channel, that was the bra era. That's a major aspect. That's difficult. Mid, it's not hard. You just have to work out, which a lot of people don't want to do. But I was fine with working out. I've been working out the whole time. But you do have to kind of work it off a bit with mid. But it's not hard. You have energy and stuff. Now, where we get to hard again is this era. When you get to vanity weight era, when you're no longer overweight, and you want to lose more for how you look or whatever, again, within a healthy range, I always say that, that's hard. At that point, there's a lot of steps that have to be taken. It does take up a significant portion of your life. I would even argue it's impractical at certain times or certain places or etc. in life. Like, it's not always practical because it's a lot at this stage and it's not technically necessary. But it is hard. So sure, you got few times within a journey that it's hard, but it's not that hard in class 1 obesity. It's not that hard being mid-size. It's just not. So no. Period, no. If you're significantly overweight, but you're not extremely overweight, it is not that hard. It just isn't. Like, we need to stop. Okay. Unless you've had to lose upwards of 10 pounds, don't try to tell me it's not. Honey, well, I've lost over 150. So I'll tell you. I'll tell you what's hard. Some people are blessed with good genes and sporty parents, but many are not. It's not always about genes. A lot of times it's about how your thyroid is functioning. Which, again, if you guys look it up, like PCOS and hypothyroidism, they go hand in hand. They're besties. So that's typically what it is. I think a lot of times what people interpret as good genes is actually malnutrition versus not malnutrition. It's, high amounts of PUFA consumption versus not high amounts of PUFA consumption, aka seed oils. So if somebody didn't binge on like a billion fried foods throughout their life, they're going to have an easier time because the fat on your body has a different fatty acid profile than somebody who's been eating tons and tons of chips. I always use chips as an example because that's what I personally did, and it was horrible. And that's why it was really hard to downsize, especially being super morbidly obese, because it's like, then you're like fighting your thyroid the whole way down. It's tough. So, yeah. But a lot of people don't do that, and a lot of people don't binge. So they're just kind of passively overweight. You're not going to have as hard of a time. You're just not. There's a lot of nuances to this. There is. Also, liver health is huge. Again, if you have a fatty liver versus not, it's going to be so much easier to lose weight if you don't have a fatty liver, because your liver has to process things as you lose too. So you have to consider these things, but that's typically what good genes means. Good genes in terms of weight, it has to do with thyroid and liver health typically. And a lot of times it could even just literally just be the liver, period. Because if your liver's fatty, it can make you hypo, because your liver has to convert your thyroid hormone. So if your liver is fatty, you can't get rid of excess estrogen very well, which is estrogen opposes thyroid hormone. And you can't convert your thyroid hormone from the thyroid to the usable form as well in your liver if it's a fatty liver. So it's like, no. And how do you get rid of a fatty liver? Calorie reduction, caloric restriction, a deficit. You have to burn the fat in the liver, which means you have to be in a sustained deficit. It doesn't have to be a crazy one, but it has to be one. Just people don't want to hear it. And you have to avoid alcohol, which that should be obvious. I love to be the bearer of that news. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's just, I think people who think I'm unhealthy and I can totally just drink the whole way down, I think it's really stupid. It's like, honey, like priorities. Okay. Stop. Okay. Anyways, let's continue. Fat people are constantly put down for their weight. They're insulted, made fun of. This isn't true. I've been huge. It's not constant. Now, what is constant is this internal monologue. This constant running commentary. That is constant. So you're constantly, oh my gosh, am I this? Oh my gosh, is everyone else bigger or smaller than me in here? Oh my gosh. If you're in the toxic ritualistic, baby, that is constant. That's constant. You never stop thinking about it at a certain point. Like when you get really bad, you just literally never stop thinking about it. It's like almost 24/7. So that's constant. The internal monologue, that running commentary of that's constant. They're insulted, made fun of, criticized, and attacked for what their bodies look like. Oftentimes people do this to themselves too. A lot more often than other people do. If they want to post online about how much they love their bodies, well, you don't have to do that. If you post online, you're opening yourself up to criticism, which if you're super sensitive about it, you don't need to. This is not actually a necessity. Okay? Or wear t-shirts that say thick thighs save lives, then by all means they should. It's no one else's business. Okay, I mean, if they want to wear this shirt, they can. I mean, you have a right to wear it, but other people don't have to like it. And also, they don't have to agree with it either. It's not necessarily true. You could wear a shirt that says, the sky is red. And it's like, okay, you can wear a shirt that says that, but it doesn't make it true. You know what I'm saying? And don't say being fat is unhealthy. It is. Because A, they know, they don't know. There's actually a lot of people that are totally delulu thanks to fat acceptance. So sometimes people that aren't even in the toxic ritualistic don't believe it's unhealthy because they're so often gaslighted by people that have E4 by the letter D that they actually start to believe it, which is a huge issue. People tell them every day, yeah, but people also tell them every day that it isn't unhealthy. And that's between them and their doctor. Well, if that's the case, then why are they posting anything at all online to even be criticized by anybody ever? It's nobody's business. You have to. The thing about this topic is people talk about it. So if people talk about it publicly and you put it on a public platform and you're doing all this stuff, then people are going to have something to say about it. If it's between them and their doctor, then they shouldn't be posting about it. They shouldn't make any statement about it ever. If it's all out there, then it's not just between them and their doctor. And again, this person is delulu when they don't understand that toxic ritualistic reinforcement is a thing. Therefore, what I'm saying, people that have E fall by the letter D, any of them will reinforce them in other people, which this person is currently doing. And this person doesn't even have BING. And they're still reinforcing people that do. So it can't just be just between them and their doctor, because they're going to spread the message of the toxic ritualistic and reinforce it in everyone around them, typically, unless if they're just quiet about it. But if they're talking about it, then they're telling it to everybody. And so it's not just between them and their doctor. It's actually something that basically pollutes the community. Because if we don't talk about it at all, then all you're going to have is these toxic ritualistic voices that will never cease. So people that don't have these issues do have to speak up and dispel illusion, delusion, etc. in order for it to be more manageable. Because it's going to keep getting worse. Because if we all be quiet, the toxic ritualistic voices will never stop. They're going to just get louder and louder and louder and crazier and crazier and crazier. So it's like you can't just leave it there because it doesn't stay there. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not exactly real thin, but I'm a varsity track runner who works out 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm really, really healthy. And it bothers me so much when people look surprised when I tell them that just because I don't have a certain body type. Okay. I don't know, maybe this person does have BING, then I don't know what this means. I need specifics, because, okay. R/FatLogic makes naturally skinny people feel good about themselves for being fit and healthy, even though a lot of them don't really have to think about what they eat. Body positivity is a great movement, especially for those out there like myself who have struggled with the toxic ritualistic. FatLogic shames fat people for no reason. Okay. So I do want to see. Okay, I think people are taking more midline approaches. Okay, yeah, ooh, they're actually agreeing with it. Ooh, that's horrible. Okay, so yeah, we could see. I mean, this is old. This is from 6 years ago, which I think FA was like at its peak 6 years ago. So that's probably why it was like, people were like, yeah, I agree. But anyways, we're not going to get into all that. I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Have a good rest of your day, night, etc. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one. Bye.